Hello, everybody. Welcome into Go with the Flow, presented by R.S. Andrews. My name's Brandon Adams. Happy to have you with us. We make our picks for the upcoming week's worth of games. Not just me, but the entire Dog Nation team. Mike Griffith, Jeff Sintel, Connor Riley, and as we said before, R.S. Andrews on hand there as well. Happy to have Dari Payro with us for there as we once again make our picks for the upcoming week. Of course, still kind of reeling a little bit from the last couple of weeks. We'll give you an update on the standings on that before we get into this week's games. In fact, let's go ahead and show this to you on the screen here to give you an idea of who's standing tall right now. And my, oh my, what a sight that is to behold. Mike Griffith with the King's crown on, the robe there as well, as he was 8-2 a week ago, putting him at 13-5 on the season. That'll put him to the front of our season-long standings here. Dari Payro in second place right now, and really only a game behind after a 6-4 week last week, 12-6 on the year. Connor Riley did not follow up his momentum from week one, goes 5-5, 12-6 on the campaign. Jeff Sintel and myself also 5-5. That puts us both at 9-9 on the year. Still haven't had a losing week, by the way, with my picks since going back to October of last year. So
not a winning week now this year.
Listen, you make of it what you can. But nonetheless, those are our standings. And obviously, you keep that in mind as you listen to us make our projections, what's going to happen for the upcoming week's worth of games. If you've never played along, here is how our game goes. In just a moment, I'll toss at the point spread for the big games of note. Obviously, Georgia, South Carolina, and we'll lead things off on that. And then we will go through it one by one. Mike Griffith, Jeff Sintel, Connor Riley, our Dog Nation Daily listeners and viewers, myself. Then after that, a consensus is formed. Or as we like to ask Dari Payro here from R.S. Andrews, do you want to go with the flow and join that consensus? And our encouragement is for you to play along, make your own picks there as well. Obviously, when it comes to my own selections, it's fairly easy to do better than me, but we'll find out over the course of the season how you do with your picks there too. So we've got a couple of interesting SEC games, an SEC team on the road against a top 10 opponent, a big showdown between the same two teams that played in last year's SEC championship game, now doing so in a regular season tilt. And of course, Georgia hosting South Carolina in the role of a gigantic favorite. And so, in fact, let's go ahead and start right there. South Carolina comes to Georgia. Dogs 31-point favorites here. You know the story a little bit with South Carolina. 2-0 on the year in the initial campaign for Shane Beamer. Easy win over Eastern Illinois in week one. Harder fought game on the road against East Carolina last week. Of course, there are questions at quarterback here. Zeb Nolan, the former graduate assistant turned active member of the roster, has been playing, but Luke Doty is healthy and expected to return at some point in time. We just don't know if that's in time for this week's game against Georgia. On the other side for the Bulldogs, Georgia actually exceeded 50 points last week for the first time since November of 2019 against Georgia Tech. They've got some quarterback drama of their own with the lingering injury for JT Daniels, and maybe the thought that last week starter Stetson Bennett's a little bit banged up there as well. And the big story for the Dogs on defense have yet to allow a touchdown offensively on the season. Dogs are gigantic favorites. 31 points is the number. Mike Griffith, tell us your thoughts on the game.
I feel like it doesn't matter who starts at quarterback for either team. I don't think the result's going to be affected. I like Georgia to win this game big. I'm picking Georgia to win 45-10 Saturday night.
Jeff Sintel, what do you think? 31's the number.
Okay, so looking at this game, you got a lot of things to think about here. Georgia, are they going to reverse the mojo? One week they don't have offense. The next week they do have offense. I think this is a very difficult thing to peg, especially when you consider Georgia's defense is going to be good at grabbing a special teams touchdown or maybe a defensive touchdown in the same manner. I like Georgia in this one. I like Georgia to cover all these points. I think they're going to do it a little bit more with the ground game this week. I think Georgia's offense will reach the point where wherever you go heavy-handed in one week with in terms of a statistical brilliance, you're going to have a counter and a correction the next week. This Kirby Smart wants to find that balance. I think run game does a lot here, and I think Georgia covers those 31 points.
So a lot of Georgia thus far. Connor Riley, how about you? Dogs giving 31.
First time all year, I'm going to take Georgia here. I don't think it matters. This team put up a ton of points on South Carolina a season ago. They ran the ball really well last year against the South Carolina team. I'll be interested to see if Georgia's able to do that on Saturday. But give me Georgia here with a big number. Luke Doty, Zeb Nolan, I don't think whoever the quarterback is going to have a whole lot of success or fun on Saturday night.
Dog Nation Daily listeners and viewers agree 94% do take the Dogs here in this spot. A couple of interesting trends. First of all, this is Georgia's first time being a favorite of 30 or more points in SEC play since September of 2018, a game in which they did not cover that day although did beat Tennessee 38-12 as the final. And as you might expect, Georgia no different than a lot of teams. They've actually struggled in this spot as a 30-plus point favorite. They're just 2-6 in their last 8 games when favored by 30 or more. This stat doesn't matter. I'm just going to throw it in just for the sake of conversation. South Carolina, in its last 5 meetings versus Georgia, the 5 that's been coached by Kirby Smart, Gamecocks 2-3 against the spread in those numbers. So this has not been an automatic cover for Kirby Smart during his time as Georgia's coach, but obviously this is a brand new version of South Carolina. The point here, though, is, and I've been talking about this on Dog Nation Daily a lot this week, I think there's a lot of reasons why Georgia's motivated for this game. Lots of little things that add up to maybe a big thing. It's hard to cover a 31-point number, but I think Georgia does it on Saturday, and that puts a clean sweep on the side of UGA here. Dar, you want to go with the flow and join everybody else who's taking Georgia right now?
Yeah, break out the broom. I'm coming with the dogs. ELITE, elite. That's what this team is. It's a big number. I think they're going to cover it. And I don't even know who the starting quarterback is for Georgia right now. But their defense is going to pitch a shutout. It's going to be tough for the Gamecocks to probably even cross midfield. They were 2 of 12 on third down conversions against the Pirates last week. I think they're really, really going to struggle against Georgia.
We'll turn our attention back to Georgia by the time our show is done. But for now, though, let's look at the marquee game in the SEC this week, at least the game pitting SEC versus SEC competition. It's Alabama and Florida, rematch of last year's SEC championship game. Crimson Tide on the road as a 16-point favorite here. For Florida, it's 2 easy wins to start the year against Florida Atlantic and South Florida. Of course, big question there, quarterback with Emory Jones seemingly playing less effectively right now than Anthony Richardson is, but no real signal yet from Dan Mullen if he's contemplating a quarterback change ahead of this game. Obviously, both guys probably play. On the Alabama side of things, also 2-0, dominant win against Miami in week 1. A win against Mercer last week, though, that might have been a little sloppier than you might realize. Of course, the key defender for the Crimson Tide, Will Anderson, the top pass rusher, not just for Alabama this season, but one of the more effective pass rushers Nick Saban's had in recent years. His status is uncertain as of press time, recording time, did not practice early this week for the Crimson Tide. That is certainly an issue worth watching. But nonetheless, Crimson Tide do play, at least according to our number from BetUS, as a 16-point favorite. There's been a little bit of fluctuation with this line, so check it out before you make your own choice on that. But Mike, Alabama minus the 16 on the road. What do you think?
Yeah, I think this is an easy win for Alabama. Florida's offense has struggled. Emory Jones had 2 interceptions in each of the first 2 games. He's playing against a better defense. Brenton Cox has opened his mouth up and provided some bulletin board material, saying the question isn't if we're ready, the question is if they're ready. That's all I need to take Alabama to win this game 41-17.
Jeff, Crimson Tide on the road, given 16. What you got?
Yeah, so I'm going to resist the urge here to make a comment about these picks or anything that might have been said in a faithful Alabama Crimson Tide's last press conference during his time in the SEC. I tell you what, though, I think Florida's best football is going to come when they get Anthony Richardson as their fixture at quarterback. I think he's 6'4", 235. He can really get rolling. He can really get downhill. I think he expands and increases the threat level of their offense. But, folks, this is Alabama. This is D's dynasty in all of college football. And I think Alabama's going to win this by about 24 points.
Connor, what do you think? Alabama minus 16 on the road.
Yeah, this is in the BA zone where Alabama's favored by more than 2 touchdowns, but less than 3. Give me Alabama here. Obviously, I am a little bit worried about the Will Anderson injury. They're already without Christopher Allen out there on the edge rusher position. But I'd point out that Anthony Richardson has a hamstring injury that he is dealing with entering this game. And so because of that, just give me Alabama here. And they're still dilly-dallying between this quarterback situation there. You got to have all your ducks in a row if you're going to contend with Alabama, much less beat them. So give me Alabama here to cover quite easily, might I add.
Dog Nation Daily listeners and viewers agree with Connor. 88% take the Crimson Tide here. They obviously hate Florida, and I do too. That's why it pains me to say what I have to say here. I think everything in this game, despite the 1 point that Connor mentioned, I think everything in this game really screams Florida plus the points here. Florida's only been a home underdog twice in the Dan Mullen era. Not only is Florida 2-0 against the spread in those games, they've also won both those games outright. Auburn in 2019, LSU in 2018. course, Alabama typically very strong in this spot as a favorite on the road of between 11 and 19 points. They are 8-1. I'm sorry, 7-1 their last 8 instances in that situation. This is kind of a Goldilocks zone for them. But the one game in that span they didn't cover, 2017 on the road, Mississippi State won the game 31-24 as a 14-point favorite. The coach in that game on the other side was Dan Mullen. I don't take any great pleasure in saying this, but a Florida team that played Alabama close in the SEC championship game a year ago, I think they do it again on Saturday. I'm going to go against the rest of the folks here. I think the numbers say you got to take Florida plus the 16 right here. Maybe a contrarian pick, but it's my pick nonetheless. Dari, the flow on the side of Alabama. You want to go with the flow and take the Crimson Tide.
Well, I'm back in my groove. I'm going for the perfect, clean slate of getting all my picks right this week. So I'm taking Bama. I'm not deviating from the formula. Bama's going to be fired up to come to the game in the Swamp. They're going to be looking to score 30 points or more for the 29th consecutive game. It's the longest current FBS streak going on right now. The all-time record is 31 games. They're going to eclipse that. Another stat that's interesting is Bama has won 31 straight games against SEC East teams. You have to go back to 2010 before they've lost. This is the only second time that Florida's been a double-digit home dog in over 30 years at the Swamp. I'm taking Bama. There could be something, Brandon, maybe late score that's a backdoor cover. I don't think so. But I really like the over in this game. It's 48 just because I think Bama's going to put up a lot of points.
I'm not too proud to say that I'll be happily take a backdoor cover if that's what it takes to get me the pay window here. I'll do it by any means necessary. I'm not too proud for that one way or another. Of course, that's the big game pitting SEC teams against SEC teams this week. But as far as an SEC team going on the road, after not really being tested at all week 1 and week 2, Auburn finds itself heading to Happy Valley. Auburn scoring 60 or more points in both of its games thus far this season against the Zips of Akron in week 1 and against, I'm going to steal a joke from another podcast here for a moment, Alabama State in week 2. You got to, not put the accent on the state there too much because it makes it sound a lot better. But nonetheless, Auburn off to a 2-0 start, now ranked 22nd in the AP poll. Of course, Penn State comes in 2-0 on its season there as well. Big win against Wisconsin that everybody saw. Maybe less attention on the Ball State game the week after that. It is also a whiteout game there at State College, and there's already a lot of excitement about that for Nittany Lion fans, given the fact that there were no fans in the stadium a year ago there at State College, PA. Penn State in this spot finds itself a 6-point home favorite in the first road game of the Brian Harsin era. Mike, what do you think about the Tigers getting 6 on the road?
Yeah, Penn State's a lot like Auburn campus. Happy Valley's kind of out there in the middle of nowhere. It's a big stadium. It's probably a little overrated. I've been in a whiteout there. I saw Michigan State win there. Those fans leave early. I'm going to take Auburn in an upset here. 29-26. Just not a lot of faith in the Big Ten. We saw Ohio State go down last week to Oregon. To me, Ohio State's the best team in the league. I think it's all relative. I really like Auburn and Byron Harsin to come through and upset the Nittany Lions in Penn State, to steal a joke from you that you stole from another podcast.
It was the CBS podcast that I stole that from, just to give full credit here. Jeff, Auburn getting 6 in Happy Valley. Go ahead.
Yeah, guys, I'm not too I'm a little bit higher on Penn State than my contemporary there, Mike Griffith is. I think they're capable of some good football. I think they showed me something against Wisconsin. I've always valued teams that actually play somebody, play a big program with big program resources, especially that offensive and defensive lines for Wisconsin. I like Penn State to win this game, but I like Auburn to cover, giving me that 6 points. I do foresee a close game. I don't see Auburn winning it, but I do like the 6 points. But I do think it will be happy in Happy Valley on Saturday night.
Connor Riley, what do you think? Auburn is a 6-point road underdog.
Give me Penn State here. Bo Nix is still the quarterback for Auburn. That's correct. That hasn't changed.
To my understanding. My sources say yes.
Yeah, give me Penn State here. I think this Penn State defense is going to give him a lot of issues. There are some major questions about how this Auburn offensive line is going to play. I like this Penn State team in this situation. I don't expect it to be all that high scoring of a game, but I do think Penn State can win by 7 points, which is what I'm going to predict them to do here.
Obviously, 7 being a key number there. Dog Nation Daily listeners and viewers agree with Connor. 64% do take Penn State here in this spot. So you got a little bit of conflict there between Auburn hate and SEC love. So do with that what you will. Mike mentioned the whiteout, what Penn State fans are. I'm a big fan of the pageantry of college football. I like all that kind of stuff. I actually like the whiteout. The truth is, in terms of an impact on the final score, that hasn't always been the case. There have been 16 previous whiteouts. Penn State is only 8-8 in those games which the whiteout has occurred. So not always a guarantee to win. In fact, not even winning more than chance would dictate in spots like this. Here's what Auburn's trying to overcome, though, hearkening back to the Gus Malzahn era. Auburn just 2-5 in its last 7 games on the road as an underdog. This team has not really, in the Malzahn era, really risen up in games like this. Obviously, that's what Harson's trying to change in his first year. On the other side of things, though, Penn State has not protected its home turf very well, whiteout or not. 3-6 in its last 9 against the spread as a home favor. And the thing that sticks in my mind here a little bit is 35-19 a year ago, losing to Maryland in a game in which they were 27.5-point favorites. Last year was a weird year, so not quite the same, home game vibe for the Nittany Lions. But that's a lot of points to drop a game. And that's what happened against Maryland a year ago. The honest truth is I really don't have a strong feel about this. If I'm actually making a bet, there's no way I'm picking this game. I just don't have that kind of feel on it. I do think Auburn might be slightly on sale, though. And at a bargain price, I'll take them plus the 6. I believe Jeff said he still thinks Penn State may win the game. I think that's probably true there as well. I could see Auburn playing it close, though. So I'll go Tigers here on this. That actually puts the flow on the side of Auburn, believe it or not. Or do you want to go with the flow and take the SEC underdog on the road?
I do not. I'm going to take Penn State to cover this game. I think this is one of my favorite games to watch this weekend. Night game, Happy Valley. You have the whiteout. Auburn's team is going to be prepared with a game plan coming in it. I just don't think that those 2 powder puff games to start the season gives them enough competition to the caliber type of game that they're going to play against Penn State, who's already battle tested, winning that big game on the road. I think this game's going to be close, and I think Penn State's going to win it late in this game to cover.
Not to get into your personal business here, but you mentioned this being one of your favorite games to watch this weekend, which I totally agree with. I think this is a very entertaining game to watch. But for me, I wouldn't bet this with your money, Dari, and that's a pretty significant wallet. I mean, do you like the game enough to bet it, or do you like it enough just to make the pick on a show like this?
I like it enough to make it a pick on the show like this. Something like this, I'd stay away from this game just because it's more enjoyable to watch. I think it'd be great if Auburn wins on the upset. I know a lot of friends here that went to Auburn that are actually going to this game, so they're going to have a blast. This is a tough game to pick.
Yeah, so for me, Florida, I would like enough, as much as that pains me to say it, to put a little money down on that. The Auburn side here, not quite as much. By the way, speaking of when it comes to putting your money down, obviously when you're thinking about the things involved in your home, air conditioning, heating, plumbing, electric, those systems inside your house that you want to be functioning properly. Or as we think of on this show, you want that air flowing, the water flowing. You want those things flowing through your house where they're supposed to be. If that's ever not the case, then obviously that puts a frown on your face. And you want to turn that frown back into a smile. The company that story after story has been delivering smiles for you, our friends at RS Andrews. You can find them online at rsandrews.com. They'll take care of it for your air conditioning, your heating, your plumbing, your electric needs. It's still warm weather. That's going to be true around here for the next several weeks. So if you're worried about your air conditioning unit, if it's not keeping you comfortable and cool, especially at night, I can't sleep in a hot house. Many of you very much the same way. If you know that you've got an issue, if you know your air conditioning unit's on its last legs, get the peace of mind you needed by getting it tuned back up to factory fresh specs. It only costs $99. So find out more about that online at rsandrews.com. And it's always great to have Dari Payroll from RS Andrews on with Go With The Flow with us each and every week. We'll take a step down in competition now. And effort at full disclosure, total candor here for a moment. We had to stretch a little bit in terms of the games we're picking this week because there were a few obvious choices. Obviously, you're picking Alabama, Florida. Obviously, picking the Penn State, Auburn. After that, it's like, do you pick Tulane, Ole Miss, or do you pick Stanford, Vanderbilt? We said it's probably more fun to pick Tulane, Ole Miss for a number of reasons. So let's turn our attention to that right now. Ole Miss, people obviously saw them first week of the season on the Monday night. Really very impressive against Louisville there in the final game of the Chick-fil-A Kickoff Classic in Atlanta. And also as a week one impressive performance, albeit in a loss for Tulane. That had its home game taken away from it against Oklahoma, slated to be in New Orleans. The weather obviously forced that game to play in Norman, but the Green Wave really traveled, keeping it close with Oklahoma for the entirety of the game. Ole Miss coach Lane Kiffin's been very complimentary of the Green Wave this week, calling them an SEC caliber team in terms of the talent level that he sees from them. And Tulane, of course, a former member of the SEC, and they'll acknowledge their 3 career SEC championships on the back of their helmet here this week. So it makes for a fun backdrop between these two teams that kind of have that Delta region, kind of cover here between New Orleans and Oxford all the way around. So Lane Kiffin's bunch is a 14.5-point favorite here, Mike. What do you think?
Yeah, Tulane used to play LSU every year, and then they just weren't good enough, so they got dropped from the rivalry. It just didn't make any sense, even though they were an old rivalry in state, and they've kind of fallen now into the ashes. They're better than Georgia Tech, it's worth noting, but they're still not a member of the SEC. And I don't think that they're going to be able to compete with Ole Miss. I think that Ole Miss is on upset alert. I think Tulane kind of snuck up on Oklahoma. I thought Oklahoma got sloppy in that game. I like Ole Miss to win this game and win it big, 37-13.
Jeff, what do you think? Ole Miss is a 14.5-point favorite there at Vaught Hemingway.
We've got a lot of SEC tradition here. I love the fact that they're going to put the SEC recognition of the championships on display this weekend. I just know Lane Kiffin's getting to get back on the sideline and call some ball plays. I also know that Ole Miss is a team, I think Brandon would call it, I don't know if you use the term on sale, but for me, that's kind of like a blue light special for me, going back to old Kmart days as a youngster. So I like Ole Miss to put a lot of points on the scoreboard. I think they will cover this spread. Give me Ole Miss in this one.
Connor, what do you think? Rebels, 14.5-point favorites against Green Wave.
Give me the fighting early Kylers here. I like Tulane in this spot. They're going to be able to score a lot. Willie Fritz is a really gifted offensive coach. I expect a backdoor cover here, but I will absolutely take that. Give me Tulane here at 14.5 in particular there.
Worth noting that the 3 SEC championships that Tulane has won over the years, more so than a good number of current teams in the SEC. Obviously, the recent additions, but even Mississippi State has fewer than 3 SEC championships. So Tulane has a little bit more SEC history than some might realize. It's also a great uniform game. I would say that these two teams have 2 of the best uniforms in all of college football, depending on which combination they're wearing there. And this is where I sometimes get myself in trouble. Before I make my pick, let me also say that Dog Nation daily listeners and viewers, 68% on the side of Ole Miss, going pro SEC there on that one. But this is where I sometimes get myself in trouble. I am slow to change my mind. And after the way that Ole Miss beat up on Louisville, a game that I was on the wrong side of, then it might appear that I was wrong with the Rebels, because they would be one of my under teams to begin the season. Did not see them going 8-4 this year, but I am going to remain persistent with my original opinion that this is not an Ole Miss team that's as good as some in the country think it can be. They did play better defense against Louisville than I would have expected them to. But nonetheless, I changed my mind slowly. And my mind is still where it was in the preseason. I'm down on Ole Miss, which means Tulane has a chance to keep this one close. I'll take them plus the 14.5. Flow, though, on the side of the Ole Miss Rebels. What do you want to do with that, Dar? You want to go with the flow?
I'm going with the flow. I'm taking the Rebels. You asked earlier, about the Penn State Auburn game on placing some of my own money out of my own wallet. This game I actually really love. So this would be one I absolutely love in this game. The Rebels are firing on all cylinders. They got that offense humming. It's going to continue this week. I think we're getting a discount here because Tulane scored some touchdowns late and scored some points against Oklahoma. I think that's why it spreads here instead of 20-something. I love Ole Miss this week.
Very good pick. Similar story in the Magnolia State with Mississippi State. Got a surprise, at least in my mind, surprise win a week ago against NC State. That was a game in which they were underdogs there at home. Now they go on the road, traveling as a small favorite against Memphis. Memphis, they're at the Liberty Bowl as a 3-point underdog there in that spot. Mike, what do you think about the Memphis Tigers hosting Mississippi State as a 3-point underdog?
Memphis had a pretty impressive win, beating Butch Jones and Arkansas State in a shootout last week in Jonesboro. There's always two sides to the game, and I like Memphis in the Liberty Bowl. They've played teams tough in there before, and Mississippi State, we saw them struggle in week one, and of course last week they played better. But my instincts on this, just based on the trend in Vegas, is to go with the house money. That's to take the Memphis Tigers. I'll take them in an outright upset, 24-23.
Jeff, what do you think about Memphis hosting Mississippi State, the Bulldogs 3-point favorites on the road?
Yeah, this is a spot where I go against the man with the crown on top of his head. I like what Mississippi State did last week. I like what they're capable of still going forward this season. In this matchup, I know there's going to be some recruiting territory, kind of where these teams kind of recruit a lot of the same high schools in some of their areas. I'm going to take Mississippi State in this one. Give me the Bulldogs out of the SEC. Maybe this is Imperial Conference hierarchy bias, but I like Mississippi State in this one, and I like them to cover that as well.
Of course, over the years, we've seen Memphis and Ole Miss play a lot. They're fairly geographically close and almost rivals. Mississippi State and Memphis, we don't see quite as much. Connor, what do you think about the game?
I was tempted to pick Mississippi State after NC State just totally let me down last week. I demand a public apology from Dave Doran and his team with the way they had played in that game. However, I'm going to go with Mike here. Give me Memphis. I think this Memphis team is a talented bunch. I think they are a little upset that they did not get invited to the Big 12, and they want to come out and show that we're just as capable football-wise. This is the BYUs, UCF, Cincinnati's, Houston's of the world. So I think they know they have a chance to make a statement in this game. I think they're going to be able to move the ball. And because of that, give me Memphis here, a home dog, +3.
Yeah, Dog Nation Daily listeners and viewers are going pro SEC again, 71% on the side of Mississippi State, but I can't buy that, though. This is a simple pick for me. I don't think Mississippi State's good, and they did surprise me a week ago. But listen, I'm not going to be one of these guys that changes my mind every single week because the result goes against me. I want to stick with my long-term plan on Mississippi State, which is to go against it almost each and every week, including this spot here. Small line for team playing at home. Probably not a ton of fans there, but still not easily traveling, especially for a disorganized buffoon like Mike Leach. That's enough for me to like Memphis here in the spot. And that puts the flow still on the side of Mississippi State. Dar, you want to go with the flow and take the maroon version of the Bulldogs?
So I just want to get straight. So you're like boycotting the state of Mississippi. No Ole Miss, no Mississippi State.
I am down on both teams. I think that there's been a little too much public buy-in on Ole Miss, and I thought for the most part, that's dissolved on Mississippi State. But I thought last year people were way too in on Mike Leach. I just think Leach is a clown. I don't think he's a good fit for the SEC.
But wait, did you use the word clown? Because we don't throw that word clown around lightly on Dog Nation. You said a disorganized buffoon. You took clown and raised it another level, BA.
Here's my rule. I don't punch down. In other words, if you make millions of dollars, I'm more than happy to call you a clown. If you're working for nothing more than a scholarship, at that point in time, I'm going to probably.
Well, they got NIL money now, so there's a contingency there.
But that's kind of my general thought on that. So yes, I am. Dari, to go back to your original question, I am a little down on the Magnolia State, more so Leach than Kiffin. But there's just been way too much public buy-in on these very famous coaches, I believe.
Well, I'm gonna. I actually, this is another game. I'm gonna dig in my wallet, and I'm taking Mississippi State
really
to cover this game. Absolutely love it. Leach has to be drooling coming into this game. Memphis defense gave up almost 700 yards last week to Arkansas State. For the podcast, breaking it in there.
Right.
Yeah, exactly.
Keep on this joke. It's not that good.
It's not that good. It's definitely not that good. But I think what they did against NC State last week, who actually is a really good team. Their defense did well. Their special teams played well. I think they're going to be put up a ton of offense. I think Will Rogers is going to have. He may throw for 600 yards, 500 yards in this game. I don't think Memphis will be able to keep up.
Seems like a classic Leach game for sure. Chance to put big quarterback stats against what might be, certainly from a talent standpoint, an overmatched opponent, but should be pretty interesting there. Anytime Memphis gets a chance to play against the SEC, they always seem to enjoy that possibility. We'll now step out of the SEC for a moment. We'll come back to Georgia, South Carolina again before we're done. The only other game on Saturday involving top 25 opponents takes us to out west, where it's Arizona State and BYU. BYU's the home team here. They are 4-point underdogs there at home, fresh off a Holy War win last week against Utah. Arizona State last week took down UNLV, and the week before that beat Southern Utah. Now, I watch a lot of college football, and I stay pretty well plugged in. I've never heard of Southern Utah. I did not know there was a Southern Utah, but nonetheless, Arizona State took care of them in a 41-14 score there in week one. What do you think about the Cougars here against Sparky, Mike? BYU 4-point underdogs at home.
Well, first, the word on Sparty. The Michigan State-Miami game wasn't on the board.
No, this is Sparky. This is, to be clear, this is Sparky. Arizona State.
I'm making a plug for my alma mater. We didn't pick the game. I'm going to take Michigan State in the 8 points against Miami. And to wedge that in. This is a marquee game. They don't get those games very often now. As far as this game is really tough. This is I've gone back and forth on this one. Ultimately, I'm going to go with Herm Edwards because they play to win the game. And I think they're going to play to cover the spread. BYU is a fantastic program. I'm excited to see BYU joining the Big 12. But this Arizona State team's got a lot of seniors. I think they're salty. They've got Sparky. They've got Herm Edwards. I like the uniforms. I'm going with Arizona State to win 31-23.
Jeff, what do you think? Top 25 matchup out west in Provo.
Yeah, you got a home dog here. You got the Holy War winner. I think that game's going to take a little bit out of the Cougars in this one. I like Arizona State. I like what they have at the quarterback position, all the pro pedigree around Herm Edwards' program. I'm going to take those points. I think Arizona State's going to win this game. Give me Arizona State here.
So, Jeff, a little bit of a reference to Jalen Daniels there. Connor, what do you think about the Sun Devils and the Cougars?
Give me Arizona State here. BYU is one of the most inexperienced teams in the country. Obviously, big win a week ago over Utah. But I think this Arizona State team is pretty talented if the coaching staff can get out of its own way and allow its playmakers to make plays here. So give me Arizona State -4 here, though I don't feel great about it after Jeff and Mike both picked it.
I don't have a ton on this. I think it's a pretty fun game to watch. I think BYU hates the Pac-12 and typically pretty motivating anytime they get a chance to take on one of those teams out of that league. It's a late game, so if you're getting settled in after the Georgia game, you get a chance to see some of this. This is one of those simple things for me. If I'm going to get a home team and some points, I'll take that. Arizona State does not scare me at all. I don't feel strongly about it, but I'll take BYU. I should also point out that the Dog Nation Daily listeners and viewers take BYU on this as well. And that puts the flow on the side of BYU. Let's just say
Arizona State.
Yeah, flow's on the side of Arizona State. Dar, you want to take the flow, go with the flow, and take ASU here?
I do not. I'm actually surprised BYU's a home dog here. They just beat Utah, which is ranked. They just ended 10 years or 12 years, however many times they've been losing to Utah. So they've kind of got over that step. I think this team is more physical than Arizona State. BYU actually has a really good defense. I think it's going to be a great game to watch. This is another game I'm actually kind of excited to watch. It's got a late kickoff. So after the Auburn Penn State game, I can kind of just flip to this and watch this until the late hours in the evening.
Yeah, I like the idea.
And by the way, for King Griffith over there, I actually like Michigan State to win outright against Miami on the money line. I think they're going to manhandle them and just pound the football. I don't think Miami's going to be able to stop that. I think they're going to control the clock and they're just going to run it down their throat.
This is a Miami team that's just been awful through 2 weeks against Alabama and not great against Appalachian State a week ago. So a strong pick there from Dari Peiro. Let's turn our attention back to Georgia and South Carolina here for a moment. Dogs sailed over the point total last week against UAB. Point total this week set at 48.5. Georgia, of course, a 31-point favorite in the game. At one point in time, Georgia was a pretty reliable under that has not been quite as true in the late stages of the Todd Monken era as of late. Mike, what do you think about the total points of 48.5 for Georgia and South Carolina?
Well, I think Jack Podlesny is going to make all 6 extra points and 1 out of 3 field goals. That's 45 points. And then I think that the touchdown streak will go for the defense. They played outstanding, but at some point Kirby will put the backups in the second and the 2s and the 3s in there, and somebody will score after a back interception in Georgia territory. So I've got 45-10, and that gives it the over.
Jeff, what do you think? 48.5 is the total.
Wow. So as I make this pick, it occurs to me that every way that my natural inclination has went on Georgia this year in terms of points and over-unders has not materialized on the field. I'm going under here. I don't know if Carolina can get to 7 to 10 points against Georgia, and I think Georgia can get to about 35 to 40 points against Carolina. I'm going to go under here, even though the normal Jeff Brain picking the games on the shoulder says go over. I'm going to reverse course here, kind of like Reggie Bush in the early 2000s at USC. I'm going under for this one.
I'm not saying I won't make the same pick. We should just point out the degree of difficulty involved with covering a 31-point spread in a game that stays under. That is not an easy thing to do, but I'm not saying I won't do the same thing here. Coming up in just a moment. I just want to make sure that people are following along with the full context of all this. So, Connor, what do you think? Georgia's a big favorite with a 48.5-point number here. What do you think?
For the exact reason you just outlined there, I have Georgia covering this game. Because of that, I'm going to take the over. They scored 45 points in the South Carolina defense a season ago. I think the offensive line is going to want to get right in this game. And so because of that, give me the over here. I don't feel great about it, but I think the Georgia defense is going to get your score, which will probably help you out.
Dog Nation Daily listeners and viewers, recency bias from them, 68% do have the over here in this spot after seeing Georgia go over a week ago. The problem is Georgia hasn't scored 50 or more points in back-to-back games since the beginning of the 2019 season against Arkansas State and whatever the team they played right there around that same time. This is not a team that scores 50 with regularity. As I said before, I like Georgia minus 31 points. And as I jokingly said to Jeff a moment ago, it's not easy to cover 31 but still go under 48.5. But in terms of the point total, I don't think you get any help from South Carolina. I said that a week ago when it came to UAB, and it turned out I was right about that. You just can't move the football in this Georgia defense right now. So I really see Georgia winning like 42-0 or 45-0 or something like that underneath the total, ahead of the spread. And as tight of a needle as that is to thread, that's the way I've got this one going. I got the under. I believe the flow is on the side of the over, though. Dari, what do you think? You want to go with the flow and take the over?
I'm not. I actually, this is probably the hardest pick that I had on the schedule this week was the over under for this game. But I'm leaning towards the under. I'm gonna thread the needle. Georgia covering the 31 points. Game going under. I think their defense is just gonna shut them down. Elite defense.
I mean, I think there's a real chance, Dari, that we are a couple of more weeks into the season before Georgia yields an offensive touchdown. I just think that this is, and Kirby Smart's going to hate that because it becomes one of those things that puts a sign on the back of his defense, probably more so than he wants to. But I don't see South Carolina or Vanderbilt in either of the next 2 weeks scoring an offensive touchdown against UGA. I just don't think it's going to happen.
Yeah, I agree. I think it's unless it's something like Mike said, they have an offensive turnover kind of on their own side of the field that gives them a short field. But even with that, I think the defense will probably rise up and at least hold the field goal.
Well, speaking of rising up, R.S. Andrews can rise up for you if you're heading towards the weekend. And let's face it, one of the most devastating things you can find out is you got to take a shower, and it's not hot water coming out of your shower. That's a very uncomfortable thing. In fact, maybe your spouse is telling you, hey, I know you want to watch football, but you got to do something about this water heater. Well, the thing to do about the water heater is reach out to my friends at R.S. Andrews, because in many cases, R.S. Andrews can replace the water heater for you the same day. If you go to rsandrews.com, you can find out all the details about that. They show up on time. They do the work that's promised, the price is promised. I love recommending R.S. Andrews, not just because Dari's my friend, but also because I know, because I hear from personal testimonies all the time, the great work they do for all the folks in our audience. Check out rsandrews.com for a lot more on that. Also, big thanks to our friends at BetUS for providing the point spreads here this week. Go to betus.com, use the promo code DN125 and get a 125% bonus on your initial deposit. Make sure you check that out today there as well. Enjoy the games this weekend. Hopefully I'll do a little better with my picks, get out of the basement when it comes to our season-long standings. And we will see you back here again next week for more Go With The Flow, presented by R.S. Andrews. We'll talk to you then, everybody.